Story 1. It was just past 11 p.m. and I found myself in the dimly lit back room of our building, surrounded by towering stacks of cardboard boxes. As an overnight stalker in a regular hardware store, I was used to the solitude. My usual coworker was on vacation, leaving me alone to tackle the night shift. The prospect didn't bother me, in fact, I welcomed it. There's a strange sense of freedom when no one is watching, expecting less of you. If anything went unfinished, it wouldn't really matter. Slowly and methodically, I worked my way through the deliveries that had arrived earlier that day. Each item needed to be placed in its respective aisle, so I diligently broke down the pallets and loaded the boxes onto carts. Pushing a fully loaded cart, I made my way into the main shopping area, ready to stock the shelves. Outside, rain poured heavily, perhaps even storming. Through the pitter-patter of raindrops, I thought I heard something, a faint noise emanating from the front of the building. Dismissing it as the building settling or the wind howling, I continued my task. Boxes in hand, I began stocking the shelves, humming a tune to ward off the creeping boredom. But the noise persisted, growing louder and more insistent. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to investigate and walked towards the front of the store, peering down the long aisles towards the distant front door. At first glance, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, no signs of life or movement. I stood there for a while, not in a rush to return to work. And then I heard it again, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. This time, I was certain I saw movement near the front door. It seemed as though something or someone was lurking just beyond my line of sight. Though I wasn't particularly afraid, being in my familiar workplace with all the doors securely locked, I felt a sense of duty to ensure nothing peculiar was happening outside. Approaching the front door cautiously, I peered through the smudged and scratched glass. The heavy rain obscured my vision, but I saw no cars, no people, just torrents of water cascading from the sky. Puzzled, I turned away and headed back to my workstation, determined to brush off the strange occurrence. For a while, tranquility settled over the store, almost an hour of uninterrupted silence. However, the peace was shattered as the noise returned, louder and more persistent than ever. Dropping what I was doing, I rushed back to the front, straining my eyes to make out the figure moving just outside the door. With each step I took, the figure seemed to grow more defined. And then, abruptly, it stopped and stood motionless for a brief moment before darting away. Intrigued and concerned, I sprinted towards the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of the person responsible. But the darkness and heavy rain thwarted my efforts. As I focused on the door, I noticed fresh marks and scratches, evidence of someone's malicious intent. It was clear to me that this person was attempting to break in. Fear mingled with determination as I reached for my phone and dialed the police. I stood by the door, clutching the phone tightly, while the operator assured me that help was on the way just a few minutes out. The minutes crept by, and I anxiously surveyed the empty parking lot. Suddenly, I turned my gaze towards the side of the building and froze, the same figure lurking in the shadows. Panicked, I hastily retreated, worried that I had been spotted. Taking several steps back, I tried to suppress any noise, praying for my safety. Barely 10 seconds passed before the figure reappeared right outside the door. Despite the foggy glass and rain-splattered surface, I could feel their eyes locked onto me. Suddenly, they slammed something against the window, resembling a large rock. Again and again, they struck the glass, desperate to break through. My heart racing, I instinctively backed away, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. I sprinted towards the back of the store, seeking refuge in the office, where I promptly locked the door behind me. The sound of shattering glass and the blaring alarm echoed through the building, heightening my fear. In the cramped confines of the office, I anxiously awaited any sound, listening for signs of the intruder. Silence enveloped the space, amplifying the intensity of my nerves. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, my imagination conjuring the worst possible scenarios. It wasn't until the sound of approaching sirens pierced the night that a glimmer of relief washed over me. The police arrived, their authoritative voices echoing through the empty store as they meticulously searched for any trace of the intruder. When they finally reached the office, I identified myself and recounted everything I knew, my voice trembling with residual fear. To my surprise, they found no sign of the perpetrator inside the store. It appeared that after breaking the glass, the intruder had fled. The situation puzzled me. What did they want? Their actions seemed inexplicable, leaving me unsettled and haunted by the unknown. Part of me even wished they had stolen something, a tangible motive, to make sense of the ordeal. But their lack of further action only deepened the mystery, intensifying the fear that still lingered within me. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, yet the incident continued to haunt my thoughts. The unanswered questions tormented me, playing tricks on my mind. Who was that person? What did they seek? Was it a random act or a deliberate act of malice? The uncertainty gnawed at my sanity, leaving me perpetually on edge. Over time, I became increasingly vigilant, installing security measures and enhancing the store's defenses. But the psychological scars remained, reminders of that fateful night. Every creak, every distant noise sent shivers down my spine, resurrecting the memories of fear and vulnerability. To this day, I still wonder about the intruders' intentions. Perhaps they were driven by a malevolent curiosity, relishing the terror they instilled in others. Or maybe there was a twisted purpose behind their actions, obscured by the darkness that cloaked their identity. The unanswered questions continue to torment me, a constant reminder of the fragile line between safety and the unknown horrors that lurk just beyond our perception. Story 2. Once upon a time, I embarked on a new chapter of my career as a bus driver, transitioning from the local suburban kindergarten and elementary schools to the bustling city where I resided. It marked a significant change after devoting almost 15 years to transporting children. While I cherished the job, the relentless energy of the kids became increasingly challenging to manage as I grew older. Unlike before, the city bus lot was conveniently located just a 10-minute walk from my apartment. Most passengers hopped on and off the bus swiftly, allowing me a moment of respite between stops. Although the actual act of driving in the city presented its own set of stresses, I found solace in the relative calm during the evenings. The city bus company operated round the clock, with only a handful of buses running during the night. Many drivers avoided these shifts, resulting in us day drivers being compelled to cover 2 night shifts every other week. While it disrupted my sleep schedule, the reduced number of passengers and empty roads made the job surprisingly more relaxing than during the day. It was a particularly quiet night, somewhere between 2 and 3 am as I navigated my usual route. The city slumbered, devoid of activity. Throughout the hour, not a single person required transportation. I saw only a handful of individuals outside, casually strolling the deserted streets. Reaching the final stop of the route, I parked the bus momentarily, taking advantage of the lull to catch a quick break. Leaning my head against the seat, I closed my eyes, careful not to drift off into sleep. However, my tranquility was abruptly shattered by a noise at the door, causing my eyes to snap open in alarm. To my surprise, an older man stood there, gazing intently at me. An awkward and nervous smile tugged at my lips as I opened the door for him. He boarded the bus, swiped his pass, and made his way to the back, settling into a seat. Curiosity lingered as I contemplated whether he needed to be dropped off at a particular location. "Nobody else is out, so I can drop you off wherever you need," I called out, turning my head slightly towards the back. An uncomfortable silence followed before I refocused my attention on the road, resuming my journey. Sensing his indifference, I assumed he had earbuds or was simply lost in his thoughts. Determined to fulfill my duty, I stopped at each designated bus stop along the route, adhering to protocol. Throughout the drive, I occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror, observing the man sitting in the back, fixated on some unseen horizon. Though his behavior struck me as odd, I shrugged it off, recognizing the enigmatic nature of the human mind, particularly in the wee hours of the morning. However, as the bus approached the last 2 stops, I grew increasingly perplexed about when the man intended to disembark, as the route would eventually loop back to where he initially boarded. Coming to a halt at the next stop, I shifted the bus into park and cast a glance at the man through the mirror. After a brief pause, he rose from his seat, slowly making his way down the aisle. Yet, his gaze was fixated on the floor, an abnormality that piqued my concern. As he drew nearer, I instinctively turned my body towards him, finally catching a glimpse of his face, a mask of fury and rage. Attempting to maintain composure, I averted my gaze back to the road, feigning normalcy. Nevertheless, the man stopped abruptly beside me, his intense stare penetrating my peripheral vision. "Is everything okay?" I inquired, my voice betraying a hint of anxiety. However, he remained silent. I could feel the weight of his anger and resentment bearing down on me. Yet, before I could make any further attempt at communication, he abruptly shifted his gaze away and retreated to his seat at the back of the bus. At that moment, an uneasy feeling settled over me, and a gnawing sense of dread began to take hold. Despite the mounting unease, I pressed on, resuming my driving as we approached the final stop. With every passing moment, the tension inside the bus seemed to grow thicker, suffocating the air. Glancing ahead at the empty roads and deserted sidewalks, I couldn't shake off the foreboding sensation that something ominous awaited us. Suddenly, the man rose from his seat, his movements quick and purposeful. He strode towards the front, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Without warning, he lunged forward, shoving me forcefully against the side window, his hand clutching a firearm, its cold touch pressing against my temple. As our eyes locked in a terrifying standoff, his expression mirrored the same deranged anger and fury I had witnessed before. I was paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend his motives or the imminent danger that loomed over me. Time seemed to stand still, as if the entire world had been swallowed by the darkness of his rage. In that harrowing moment, the man remained ominously silent, his grip tightening on the gun, amplifying the fear pulsating through my veins. Just when I believed that my life was about to be extinguished, a primal scream erupted from his throat, an air-splitting crescendo of rage and torment. The sheer force of the scream seemed to possess an otherworldly power, piercing through the night and echoing into the depths of my soul. And then, as abruptly as the violence had erupted, he released his grip on me and stepped back, his gaze shifting away from mine. Without uttering a single word, he retreated down the aisle and exited the bus, vanishing into the shadows of the night. As panic and disbelief consumed me, I hastily closed the door, desperately trying to steady my trembling hands. It was in that moment that the full weight of the encounter hit me, and I knew I had to alert the authorities. With shaking fingers, I dialed the emergency number, relaying the chilling events that had unfolded aboard my bus. The police arrived swiftly, their presence bringing a glimmer of reassurance amidst the lingering fear. One officer headed to the location where the man had disembarked, hoping to locate him, while another approached me to gather more information about the incident. Days later, they presented me with a photograph, a picture of the bus pass the stranger had used. However, to my bewilderment, it depicted an entirely different person. The unsettling mystery surrounding that night continued to haunt me. What kind of twisted mind could harbor such fury and resentment? What did he hope to achieve by targeting me, a mere bus driver carrying out my duties? The unanswered questions gnawed at my sanity, leaving behind an indelible scar on my psyche. To this day, that encounter remains the most unsettling and inexplicable experience I have ever endured. It serves as a stark reminder that within the shadows of the ordinary, unimaginable horrors can lurk, forever casting a pall of fear and uncertainty over our lives. Story 3. During my mid-20 seconds to early 30 seconds, I found employment at a local library. Initially, I worked day shifts as a diligent stalker and reorganizer of books. However, a few months later, a new overnight position was introduced, transforming the nature of my job. The library itself was a colossal old stone building, prominently situated in the heart of the town. Its vastness posed a challenge for us employees to maintain consistent organization throughout the day. The idea of working alone at night deterred most individuals from volunteering for the position. Yet, enticed by the prospect of a significant pay increase, I reluctantly embraced the opportunity. In the beginning, everything seemed fine. Although I performed the same tasks as before, the nocturnal setting created an entirely different ambience. I relished the solitude, escaping the need to interact with customers or assist them with their inquiries. All I had to do was immerse myself in my work, accompanied by the soothing melodies of music, undisturbed and uninterrupted. However, as the months wore on, an inexplicable unease began to gnaw at my senses. I should have grown more accustomed to the surroundings, but instead I found myself increasingly uncomfortable. The thought of the building's age crept into my mind, casting shadows of unease over my nights. Sometimes, when I glanced up from the bookshelves, the vast, empty darkness of the room seemed to stretch out before me, harboring untold secrets within its countless aisles. In moments of doubt, I would remove my headphones, hoping to dispel the eerie silence that pervaded the library. Yet, the absence of sound only intensified my disquietude. It was during one of these nights that I first heard it, a faint noise emanating from the distant reaches of the expansive room. Momentarily ceasing my movements, I strained to discern the origin of the sound. After a brief pause, I removed my headphones and peered into the darkness. The weight of uncertainty pressed upon me, leaving me momentarily paralyzed. But with a shaky resolve, I resumed my work, albeit with my headphones abandoned. As I finished reorganizing a shelf and proceeded towards the back to retrieve the returned books, the sound reached my ears again. This time, its distinct echoes resonated through the silent expanse. A book had fallen, its impact amplified by the vastness of the space surrounding me. Frozen in place, I fixated my gaze towards the direction of the sound, apprehension clawing at my thoughts. While the occasional book falling off the shelf seemed plausible given the library's size, a sense of unease persisted within me. It felt as if invisible eyes were fixated upon me, watching my every move. Battling against rising panic, my mind spun through countless scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. I fought to suppress the overwhelming fear, reminding myself that my imagination often played tricks on me. Steeling myself, I approached the area where the noise had originated, cautiously scanning the aisles. The last aisle loomed before me, devoid of any misplaced books or signs of disturbance. Dread intensified as I turned on my heels, only to come face to face with an intruder. A figure stood by the door leading to the back storage room, attempting to blend into the shadows. Though concealed, their intent gaze betrayed their presence. Suppressing a scream, I averted my eyes, suppressing the impulse to flee. I walked away, retracing my steps down the aisles, feigning indifference. The stranger's watchful eyes bore into my back, their intentions shrouded in malevolence. Exiting the library, I wasted no time in sprinting to my car, seeking refuge within its protective confines. Fear consumed me as I frantically dialed the emergency number, tears mingling with my trembling voice. The police were dispatched to the scene, and I anxiously waited outside the building, grappling with the fear that still gripped my heart. 2 officers ventured inside, searching the library meticulously, their footsteps echoing through the dimly lit aisles. Time seemed to stretch, amplifying my anxiety. Eventually, the officers emerged, their expressions puzzled. They reported finding no trace of the intruder, no evidence of a break-in or disturbance. Confusion swirled within me. Had my mind played tricks on me? Was it a figment of my imagination? I felt a pang of regret for not securing the front door upon my exit. Yet, deep down, I knew that the presence I had sensed was real, that those eyes fixed upon me held sinister intent. In the days that followed, my manager ordered a thorough inventory check, searching for any anomalies or missing items. Surprisingly, everything appeared to be in order. No significant discrepancies arose, leaving everyone perplexed. Speculation ran rampant among my co-workers, some dismissing the incident as a ploy to evade night shifts, while others questioned the existence of the intruder altogether. Despite the unsettling experience, I chose to persevere in my role at the library. The management empathized with my ordeal, granting me a month-long reprieve from night shifts before eventually assigning me back to the nocturnal realm. As the nights rolled on, I found myself bracing for another encounter, my senses heightened, attuned to the slightest disturbance. Yet, to my relief, nothing further transpired. The library resumed its quietude, a sanctuary of knowledge and solitude, unmarred by the events of that harrowing night. However, the mystery lingered, unanswered questions haunting my thoughts. Who was that intruder? What had they hoped to achieve? The enigma gnawed at my curiosity, leaving a void that begged to be filled. Years passed, and I continued my work at the library, never forgetting that haunting encounter. It became a cautionary tale, whispered among staff during late-night shifts. Some dismissed it as a mere ghost story, attributing the presence to the building's rich history. But I knew the truth lay in the depths of that night, shrouded in darkness. To this day, the identity and intentions of the enigmatic intruder remain a mystery. The incident altered the trajectory of my life, leaving an indelible mark upon my psyche. The library, once a sanctuary of knowledge, had become a repository of chilling memories. As time goes on, I find solace in the fact that I survived that nightmarish encounter. Yet, the questions continue to haunt me, a reminder that some mysteries may never be unraveled, forever locked within the confines of that old stone building transformed into a library. Story 1. The old gas station stood alone on a desolate stretch of road, its worn-out sign creaking in the wind. The flickering fluorescent lights cast an eerie glow on the cracked pavement, adding to the foreboding atmosphere. It was a place forgotten by time, a place where nightmares seemed to come alive. Jake, a weary traveler, pulled his car into the dimly lit gas station. The pump let out a loud screech as he inserted the nozzle into his tank. He glanced around, feeling a chill crawl up his spine. The air was heavy with an unnatural silence, broken only by the distant howl of the wind. As Jake finished refueling, he stepped out of the car and approached the station's small convenience store. The door creaked open, revealing shelves lined with dusty products and a pale-faced attendant behind the counter. The man's eyes held a haunted look, as if he had seen things that no one should. Evening, Jake greeted, trying to mask the unease in his voice. The attendant nodded, his voice barely a whisper. Evening. Be careful, stranger. This place has a way of changing things. Jake shrugged off the cryptic warning, attributing it to the man's evident eccentricity. He walked down the narrow aisles, the flickering fluorescent lights casting unsettling shadows on the peeling wallpaper. The air smelled of mildew and decay, making his stomach churn. As he selected a few snacks, he heard a strange noise coming from the back of the store. It was a low, guttural growl, accompanied by the clattering of cans. Curiosity got the better of him, and he ventured towards the source. The backroom door creaked open, revealing a sight that sent a shiver down his spine. The room was filled with cages, each holding a grotesque creature. Their eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity, and their snarling mouths revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. Jake stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. "WH, what are these things?" he stammered, fear gripping his voice. The attendant's eyes darted nervously. "They're experiments, failed experiments. The owner of this place, Mr. Foster, he got too curious, tried to create something unnatural." Jake's mind raced as he realized the extent of the horror that surrounded him. He needed to leave, to escape this nightmarish gas station. But as he turned to make his way back to the entrance, he found the door locked. Panic set in, and he began pounding on the glass, desperate to break free. A pale-faced attendant appeared behind him, a grim expression on his face. "You shouldn't have come here. None of us can leave. We're trapped in this place." Jake's heart sank. He had stumbled into a trap, a place where nightmares became reality. His mind raced, searching for a way out. Then an idea struck him. The creatures in the cages, they were Mr. Foster's failed experiments. Maybe, just maybe, they held the key to his escape. With trembling hands, he reached into his pocket and retrieved the key he had picked up earlier. He approached the nearest cage and hesitantly unlocked it. The creature inside snarled, its eyes narrowing with suspicion. Jake held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. To his surprise, the creature lunged at the pale-faced attendant, tearing into his flesh with its sharp teeth. The other creatures followed suit, creating a chaotic frenzy in the back room. Amidst the chaos, Jake found an opportunity to slip through the unlocked back entrance and flee into the night. He ran, his lungs burning with exhaustion, adrenaline propelling him forward. The night air felt crisp against his skin as he sprinted away from the gas station, desperate to put as much distance as possible between himself and the horrors he had witnessed. As he continued running, Jake's mind swirled with questions. How had Mr. Foster managed to create those abominations? And what had driven the pale-faced attendant to warn him and then betray him? The gas station was more than it seemed, a place of dark secrets and twisted experiments. After what felt like an eternity, Jake finally stumbled upon a nearby town. He collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping for breath and thankful to have found sanctuary from the nightmare he had escaped. As he caught his breath, he decided he needed to alert the authorities about the horrors he had witnessed. Entering a local police station, Jake found himself face to face with a skeptical officer named Detective Anderson. He recounted the terrifying events that unfolded at the gas station, fully expecting the officer to dismiss his story as a delusion or a prank. However, to his surprise, Detective Anderson's expression changed from skepticism to one of concern. "You're not the first person to come forward with a story like this," Detective Anderson confessed, his voice grave. "There have been reports of strange occurrences and disappearances in that area for years. We've been trying to investigate, but every time we get close, the evidence disappears." Jake's heart sank as he realized the depth of the darkness that lurked within the gas station. The horrors he had encountered were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger, more sinister pattern. Determined to help bring an end to the nightmares, he agreed to assist Detective Anderson in their investigation. Days turned into weeks as they delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding the gas station. They interviewed locals who had experienced strange phenomena and discovered a pattern of disappearances that had gone unnoticed. The town's residents lived in fear, whispering tales of a malevolent force that seemed to emanate from the gas station itself. Together, Jake and Detective Anderson gathered evidence and sought the assistance of experts in various fields. They uncovered the dark history of Mr. Foster, a reclusive scientist known for his unethical experiments. His obsession with bending the laws of nature had brought forth unimaginable horrors, which had now taken root in the gas station. Armed with this knowledge, Jake and Detective Anderson organized a raid on the gas station, accompanied by a team of seasoned officers. As they stormed the dilapidated building, they were met with a terrifying resistance. The remaining creatures, twisted and enraged, fought with ferocity to protect their lair. A fierce battle ensued, with gunfire and screams piercing the night. Ultimately, the officers managed to overpower the creatures and neutralize the threat. Jake watched in awe as the nightmares he had encountered were finally put to rest, their reign of terror coming to an end. In the aftermath, the gas station was sealed off, and Mr. Foster's dark experiments were brought to light. The town gradually began to heal from the wounds inflicted by the horrors that had plagued it for so long. Jake and Detective Anderson became local heroes, their bravery and determination recognized by the grateful community. However, the gas station would forever remain a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurks within the world. Its empty, decaying structure served as a warning to those who passed by, a stark reminder that even in the most ordinary places, unimaginable horrors can lie in wait. And so, the gas station became a cautionary tale, whispered among locals and shared as a warning to weary travelers. Its secrets would forever be locked away, hidden within the desolate corridors and abandoned cages, a chilling reminder that some nightmares are far too real to be forgotten. Story 2. The rain poured relentlessly, drenching the desolate highway as Sarah drove through the night. She had been on the road for hours, her tired eyes straining to stay focused on the slick pavement. The gas gauge hovered dangerously close to empty, and panic began to gnaw at her as she realized she had no choice but to find a nearby gas station. Through the sheets of rain, a dimly lit sign emerged from the darkness. "Gas and Go," it read, its flickering neon struggling against the storm. Sarah's heart leaped with relief as she steered her car into the small, rundown gas station. The old gas pumps rattled as she parked her car and jumped out into the pouring rain. A chill wind whipped through the empty lot, causing her to shiver. She hurried towards the flickering fluorescent lights that outlined the station's small convenience store. As she stepped inside, a musty scent assaulted her senses. The shelves were sparsely stocked, and the worn linoleum floor creaked beneath her feet. The store seemed frozen in time, caught between abandonment and neglect. Sarah glanced around, her unease growing. There was no attendant in sight, no other customers. The air hung heavy with an eerie silence, disturbed only by the rhythmic drumming of rain against the roof. She called out, her voice echoing through the empty aisles, but received no response. Pushing aside her growing unease, Sarah decided to refuel her car and quickly leave. She made her way to the lone pump outside, the rainwater cascading off her soaked hair and clothes. As she began pumping gas, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a figure standing at the far end of the lot, partially obscured by the rain. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine as she stared at the figure. It appeared to be a man, tall and hunched, wearing a tattered raincoat. He stood completely still, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, sensing something deeply unsettling about the stranger's presence. With her car now refueled, Sarah hurriedly got back inside and locked the doors. The rain continued to pound against the windows, drowning out any other sounds. She tried to dismiss her growing unease, reminding herself that the man was likely just another traveler seeking shelter from the storm. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah's anxiety refused to dissipate. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being trapped in a place where danger lurked. The rain intensified, casting a murky gloom over the gas station, and Sarah's mind began to play tricks on her. She glanced at the security camera mounted near the entrance, hoping for some reassurance. But to her horror, the monitor displayed only static, no trace of the exterior, no evidence of the stranger's presence. Her heart raced as a deep sense of dread settled over her. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the store, jolting Sarah from her thoughts. She jumped, her eyes darting around the room. The sound had come from the restroom at the back of the store. It was as if something heavy had fallen, or worse, someone had crashed into something in distress. Fear gripped her as she slowly approached the restroom. The rain drummed relentlessly against the roof, masking any other sounds. She cautiously pushed open the door, revealing a small, dimly lit space. The tiled floor was wet, and a flickering light bulb swung from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows. With trembling hands, Sarah reached for the light switch, flicking it on. Her breath caught in her throat as the room was bathed in an unsettling glow. The sink was splattered with blood, crimson streaks trailing down to the floor. Panic welled up within Sarah as she realized she was not alone in the restroom. A pair of muddy footprints led from the sink to one of the stalls. Heart pounding, she pushed open the stall door, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. Her eyes widened in terror at the sight that greeted her. A bloodied, lifeless body slumped against the stained toilet bowl. Its vacant eyes stared back at her, frozen in a haunting expression of fear and agony. Sarah stumbled backward, her mind reeling in disbelief and horror. She desperately fumbled for her phone, her trembling fingers struggling to dial for help. But as she brought the device to her ear, she was met with nothing but static. The rain-soaked environment seemed to interfere with any semblance of a signal. Realizing she was trapped, Sarah knew she had to escape the gas station. She sprinted back into the store, her heart pounding in her ears. But as she reached for the exit, she froze in her tracks. The figure she had seen earlier, the man in the tattered raincoat, now stood in the doorway, blocking her escape. The stranger's eyes bore into her soul, glimmering with an unsettling intensity. Sarah could sense the malevolence emanating from him, his presence suffocating her. Panic surged through her veins as she frantically searched for an alternative route, a way out of this nightmare. With every ounce of courage she could muster, Sarah turned and dashed towards the storage room at the back of the store. Her footsteps echoed in the empty space as she swung open the door, praying to find a hidden exit. But instead, she found a labyrinth of dusty shelves and forgotten supplies, an entrapment within an already claustrophobic nightmare. As she desperately navigated the maze-like room, the air grew heavier, suffused with an oppressive darkness. The flickering fluorescent lights overhead cast eerie shadows that seemed to dance and writhe. Whispers filled the air, whispering voices that taunted and tormented her. The further Sarah delved into the storage room, the more twisted it became. The shelves appeared to shift and rearrange themselves, blocking her path and disorienting her senses. Dread consumed her, as if the very walls of the gas station were conspiring against her. Exhausted and disoriented, Sarah stumbled upon a small wooden door at the far corner of the room. Desperation fueled her as she flung it open, hoping to find an escape. Instead, she found herself standing in a dimly lit basement, the air thick with the stench of decay. Rows of rusted cages lined the walls, their metal bars cold and foreboding. And within those cages, she saw then emaciated figures, their eyes vacant, their bodies scarred and broken. They reached out with bony hands, their weak cries for help drowned out by the relentless rain above. Sarah's heart broke at the sight of their suffering, their imprisonment mirroring her own. As she took a step forward, the tattered raincoat of the stranger brushed against her arm. She recoiled, her gaze meeting his once more. In his eyes, she saw a malevolence that defied comprehension, a darkness that reveled in the torment of others. Driven by desperation and a flicker of resilience, Sarah refused to succumb to the horrors that surrounded her. With newfound determination, she darted through the cages, unlocking them one by one, setting the prisoners free. Their frail bodies stumbled out of their confines, their gratitude palpable despite their weakened state. Together, they made their way up the creaking stairs, navigating the labyrinth of the gas station until they reached the main store once again. But as they emerged, a chilling realization dawned upon them. The rain had stopped, and the gas station was no longer abandoned. The empty parking lot now teemed with a congregation of shadowy figures, their faces obscured by darkness. The raincoat-clad stranger stood at the forefront, his menacing presence amplified by the gathering horde. They were trapped, surrounded on all sides, with no escape in sight. The figures closed in, their unnaturally slow movements only intensifying the fear that gripped Sarah and the newly liberated prisoners. They lunged forward with a malevolent hunger, their unearthly shrieks piercing the air. It was a horrific symphony of desperation and torment. Sarah and her newfound allies fought back with everything they had, but it seemed futile against the overwhelming odds. They were outnumbered, their strength waning with every passing moment. It was a battle they couldn't win, a battle against a force that thrived in the darkness. As hope waned and despair threatened to engulf them, a blinding light erupted from outside the gas station. The figures recoiled, shielding their eyes from the sudden illumination. Through squinted eyes, Sarah saw a group of armed individuals, their determined expressions radiating with resolve. They were a specialized task force led by Detective Rodriguez, who had been investigating the horrors surrounding the gas station for months. They had followed Sarah's trail, drawn by the signs of darkness that emanated from the cursed place. A fierce firefight erupted between the task force and the encroaching figures. Gunshots echoed through the night, punctuated by the screams of both the living and the damned. It was a battle for survival, a battle against an ancient evil that had plagued the gas station for far too long. In the chaos, Sarah and the remaining survivors seized the opportunity to escape. They fled through the battleground, pushing past the disoriented figures. Their adrenaline fueled their desperate sprint, their hearts pounding in their chests as they raced towards freedom. They burst through the gas station's shattered entrance, gasping for breath in the cool night air. The rain had ceased, leaving a sense of eerie calm in its wake. Sarah and the survivors stumbled into the waiting arms of Detective Rodriguez and his team, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and relief. The task force quickly secured the area, ensuring that the darkness that had plagued the gas station was contained. The survivors received medical attention and were escorted to safety, their harrowing ordeal etched into their souls forever. In the aftermath, the cursed gas station was condemned and marked as a site of unspeakable horrors. Its presence served as a chilling reminder that evil can manifest in the most unexpected places. Detective Rodriguez vowed to continue his investigation, to uncover the origins of the darkness that had plagued the gas station and to prevent it from ever resurfacing again. But the scars remained, both physical and emotional. Sarah, haunted by the memories of the gas station, resolved to use her experience as a driving force for change. She became an advocate for the victims of supernatural horrors, dedicating herself to raising awareness and seeking justice for those who had suffered at the hands of the malevolent forces that lurked in the shadows. And as for the gas station, it stood abandoned, a testament to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The rain continued to fall, washing away the remnants of its dark past, but the stains on the souls of those who had survived would never fade. Story 3. The sun had long set, casting a shroud of darkness over the lonely stretch of highway. Rain poured relentlessly, drenching the road as Sarah's car sputtered along, its engine struggling against the torrential downpour. The fuel gauge hovered dangerously close to empty, and a sense of urgency gripped her. Through the haze of rain, a dim glow emerged in the distance, a gas station, its neon sign flickering with a desperate plea for customers. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she pulled into the station, her windshield wipers struggling to clear her vision. The gas station appeared worn and dilapidated, as if time had forgotten it. The gravel lot was littered with potholes, and the rusted pumps groaned under the weight of the rain. An ominous stillness permeated the air, sending a chill down Sarah's spine. Reluctantly, she stepped out of the car, her boots sinking into the muddy ground. A tattered awning provided little respite from the downpour as she made her way to the entrance of the small convenience store. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. A sickly sweet smell of decay mingled with the aroma of stale coffee. Sarah's footsteps echoed through the empty store, the sound amplifying her unease. The shelves were sparsely stocked, their contents covered in a thick layer of dust. An eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of rain against the roof. Her eyes fell upon a flickering fluorescent light at the far end of the store, casting long, distorted shadows along the aisles. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she felt a presence, something lurking in the darkness, watching her every move. "Hello," she called out, her voice quivering. The only response was the echo of her own words, bouncing off the empty shelves. Panic began to well up within her as she contemplated leaving, but desperation for fuel kept her rooted in place. As Sarah approached the counter, a sudden movement caught her eye, a figure standing still in the corner. It was a man, his silhouette obscured by a tattered raincoat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. She could sense his gaze fixed upon her, penetrating and unyielding. Uneasy, she tried to ignore the stranger and focus on her task. But as she picked up the nozzle and attempted to fuel her car, a sickening realization washed over her. The pump was devoid of any life-giving fuel. The tank remained empty, mocking her desperate situation. With a sinking feeling in her gut, Sarah turned back towards the store, hoping to find some answers. But the man in the raincoat was gone, vanished into thin air. Cold dread gripped her as she felt a presence closing in, a malevolence that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the gas station. Whispers filled the air, whispers that slithered through the aisles, dancing in harmony with the relentless rain. The shelves trembled, their contents rattling as if possessed by an unseen force. Sarah's heart raced, fear pulsating through every fiber of her being. She stumbled backward, her eyes darting around the store, searching for an exit. But to her horror, the entrance had vanished, replaced by a solid wall. The gas station had become a labyrinth, a prison that defied logic and trapped her within its suffocating grasp. Sarah's breath quickened as she ran down the aisles, their arrangement shifting and distorting before her eyes. Each turn she took led her deeper into a twisted maze, the oppressive darkness closing in, suffocating her spirit. Just as panic threatened to consume her, Sarah stumbled upon a small door tucked away in a corner of the store. It beckoned to her like a glimmer of hope in the encroaching darkness. Desperation pushed her forward as she grasped the doorknob and swung it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading downwards into a subterranean abyss. Without hesitation, she descended into the unknown, her trembling steps echoing against the damp stone walls. The air grew colder with each step, and a sense of foreboding settled deep within her bones. The flickering glow of a single light bulb guided her path, casting eerie shadows that danced along the tunnel. As she reached the bottom of the staircase, Sarah found herself in a dimly lit chamber. Cold, stale air clung to her skin, and the scent of dampness mingled with a metallic tang. The space was cluttered with rusted machinery, discarded gas canisters, and an array of long-forgotten tools. Curiosity mingled with fear as Sarah cautiously navigated through the maze of forgotten relics. It was then that she noticed a faint, flickering light emanating from a narrow corridor ahead. With trepidation, she followed the light, driven by an unexplainable force compelling her forward. The corridor led to a small room bathed in an ethereal glow. The walls were adorned with arcane symbols and disturbing murals, depicting grotesque creatures and nightmarish scenes. In the center of the room stood a decrepit altar, its surface stained with what appeared to be dried blood. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she realized she had stumbled upon a place of sinister rituals, a sanctuary of unspeakable darkness. Dread washed over her, and an invisible presence seemed to press against her, whispering malevolent promises into her ears. A voice, raspy and suffused with malice, echoed through the chamber. "Welcome, Sarah," it hissed, the sound reverberating against the stone walls. "You've come to the heart of the gas station, where nightmares fuel the eternal darkness." Terror surged through Sarah's veins as she spun around, searching for the source of the voice. Shadows shifted and danced, taking form and contorting into monstrous shapes. The air crackled with a malefic energy, as if the very fabric of reality had been twisted in this unholy place. "You are chosen," the voice continued, weaving into her thoughts. "Sacrifice yourself, and the gas station will feast upon your fear, becoming a gateway to unimaginable power." Sarah's mind reeled, torn between the urge to flee and the inexplicable pull towards the darkness. But deep within her, a flicker of defiance ignited. With renewed resolve, she fought against the seductive whispers, refusing to succumb to the gas station's malevolent machinations. She sprinted through the chamber, blindly seeking an escape. The walls seemed to close in, the symbols on them pulsating with an otherworldly energy. She gasped for air, her lungs burning, as she desperately scrambled through the maze like tunnels. Just as hope waned, Sarah stumbled upon a hidden passage, concealed behind a false wall. She pressed forward, her heart pounding in her ears, until she emerged into a moonlit clearing outside the gas station. Rain poured down, washing away the remnants of the unholy encounter. Sarah collapsed to the ground, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief. She looked back at the gas station, its facade twisted and distorted, no longer a beacon but a monument to terror. And as she gazed upon it, she made a vow to expose the evil that lurked within, to warn others of the dark forces that resided in the guise of a gas station. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's harrowing experience became a beacon of truth amidst the sea of skepticism. Her story spread, capturing the attention of investigators and skeptics alike. The gas station became a subject of scrutiny, a symbol of inexplicable horror that defied rationality. Years later, the gas station stood condemned, its secrets locked away. The whispers of its malevolence echoed in the wind, a reminder of the darkness that had been vanquished but never truly eradicated. And as Sarah walked away, her mission fulfilled, she carried with her the scars of that fateful night, a testament to her strength, resilience, and the unyielding power of human will in the face of unimaginable terror. Story 1. Several years ago, back when I was just 18, I worked for Domino's. On one fateful night, I found myself out on delivery, with only one stop left to go. Eager to finish my shift and get some rest for school the next morning, I headed towards the last house. The location seemed relatively close, just a few miles from town and 6 or 7 miles from the Domino's where I worked. However, the moment I arrived at the property, an eerie atmosphere engulfed me, making it feel like I had entered the heart of the boonies. Pulling into the long and narrow gravel driveway, stretching for what seemed like a quarter mile, an instant shiver ran up my spine. A dysphoric-like feeling weighed heavily on my chest, creating a sense of unease. The driveway was flanked on both sides by dense trees, their branches extending ominously close to the road, casting long shadows that added to the eerie darkness. For a brief moment, I sat in my car at the end of the driveway, trying to gather myself. The situation was undeniably creepy, and fear crept into my bones. The late hour, nearing 10 o'clock, heightened my apprehension, and I couldn't shake the feeling of something lurking within the trees. A hooting owl added to the unsettling atmosphere, intensifying the ominous horror that surrounded me. Despite my unease, I knew I had a job to do. Returning to the store empty-handed because of fear was not an option. It would surely cost me my job. I reassured myself that I was overthinking things, that it was just a regular delivery. All I had to do was drop off the pizza on the porch, as the customer had already paid online, including a tip. Summoning courage, I cautiously navigated my way down the driveway. As I drew closer to the house, I noticed a man sitting on the front porch, his silhouette illuminated by the faint glow of the outside porch light. He took a final drag from his cigarette before approaching me. Exiting the car, I greeted him, eager to complete the transaction swiftly. However, the man stared at me, his gaze lingering for what felt like an eternity, annoyance etched on his face. Caught off guard, I stumbled over my words, trying to explain why I had hesitated at the end of his driveway. Standing before me, he abruptly snatched the pizza from my hands, complaining about its temperature. Bewildered by how he knew about my delay, considering it was impossible for him to see me from the porch, I pondered whether he had heard me or had surveillance cameras. In that moment, I decided to think on my feet. Not wanting to aggravate the customer further, my sole desire was to escape this unsettling encounter. Denying any knowledge of a delay, I could see his distress deepen, exacerbated by my response. His accusing words hinted at his disdain for liars. Suddenly, I noticed movement from inside the house, someone emerging and approaching us. Simultaneously, two figures emerged from the back, slowly advancing in our direction. Adrenaline surged through my veins. It was clear that if I didn't act swiftly, something terrible was about to unfold. Fight or flight instincts kicked in, and I wasted no time. I hurriedly handed over the remaining food and drink, including the 2-liter soda he had ordered, and bolted towards my car, desperate to escape this growing menace. But just as I reached for the driver's side door, one of the men seized me, violently slamming my head against the car window. The impact sent me crashing to the ground, disoriented and in pain. The man demanded my wallet and phone, leaving me with no choice but reluctantly. I handed over my wallet and phone, my mind racing with fear and confusion. The assailants warned me to disappear and threatened dire consequences for me and my family if I dared to involve the authorities. Their possession of my ID left me feeling vulnerable. They knew where I lived, and the risk of defying their warning seemed too great to bear. Stunned and battered, I managed to gather myself and stumble back to my car. Determined to protect my finances, I decided to act swiftly. With only about $70 in my wallet, I knew that the bulk of my money resided in my bank account. Arriving home, I pleaded with my girlfriend to use her phone, desperate to take control of the situation. Dialing the 24/7 hotline, I reported the incident, cancelling all my cards and informing them of the theft. It was a small comfort knowing that the criminals would not have easy access to my funds. However, I realized that I would need a new ID, a necessary inconvenience to ensure my safety. In the aftermath of that harrowing night, I couldn't shake the lingering trauma. The experience served as a stark reminder of the dangers faced by those who work in late-night delivery. To anyone reading this, especially fellow delivery drivers, I implore you to prioritize your safety. Trust your instincts, for they may be the thin line between life and death. Reflecting on that night, I often wondered what drove those individuals to commit such an act. Was it a random encounter, a twist of fate that placed me in their path? Or was it a calculated trap designed to exploit unsuspecting victims like me? The questions lingered, unanswered, shrouded in the darkness that swallowed that secluded house and its enigmatic occupants. Months passed, and I slowly regained my sense of security. The memory of that terrifying incident remained etched in my mind, a scar that served as a constant reminder of the fragility of life. I channeled my experience into spreading awareness among my peers and the wider community. I advocated for increased safety measures for delivery drivers and urged companies to prioritize employee well-being. Over time, my wounds healed, both physically and emotionally. I found solace in the support of loved ones, who helped me rebuild my shattered confidence. Life moved forward, but the lessons learned that night would forever shape my perspective. To this day, whenever I see a late-night delivery driver rushing through the dimly lit streets, I offer a silent prayer for their safety. I know the dangers they face, the hidden terrors that can lurk in the shadows of our seemingly ordinary world. And as I carry on with my own life, I hold on to the wisdom gained from that harrowing night, a testament to the power of intuition and the importance of staying vigilant. So, to all those who embark on the nocturnal path of delivering sustenance to strangers, I implore you to listen to your gut, heed the warnings of your surroundings, and prioritize your well-being. In a world where darkness can encroach upon even the brightest moments, staying safe may just be the key to preserving your life. Story 2. It was a cold and windy night, and I found myself out working as a part-time pizza delivery driver. Fresh out of school, I desperately needed money, and delivering pizzas seemed like a relatively easy way to earn some extra cash. At that time, I was content with the amount of money I was making, even though it wasn't much. Since I still lived with my parents and only had to cover my phone bill, it was more than enough for me. As the night grew late, I realized that this would likely be my final delivery for the evening. I hurried to complete it as quickly as possible. Arriving at the customer's house, I walked up to the front steps and knocked on the door. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary initially, as the main door was wide open, with the screen door slightly ajar. I patiently waited for about a minute and then knocked again, a little louder this time. I wanted to ensure they heard me. Faint music played in the background, leading me to believe they simply hadn't noticed my presence. Another minute passed, but still no one came to the door. I knocked 2 more times with a minute between each knock, but there was no response. This situation took me by surprise, as it was not a common occurrence. Normally, customers would answer the door within a minute of my arrival. Just as I was about to knock for the last time, I noticed a piece of paper wedged between the door. Curiosity piqued, I retrieved the paper and read its contents. It instructed me to deliver the pizza to the back door and knock loudly, accompanied by a smiley face. A sense of unease washed over me, and I hesitated for a moment. Red flags started to wave in my mind, warning me of potential danger. However, I convinced myself that I might be overthinking the situation. Reluctantly, I decided to proceed, not wanting the customer to complain about a cold pizza if they found it left on the front porch. I made my way around the house, and as I approached the back door, the music grew louder. I noticed a small campfire burning outside, but there was no sign of anyone around. Cautiously, I ascended the back patio steps and knocked on the door, following the instructions on the note. I waited anxiously for someone to answer, my impatience mounting. After a few minutes of no response, I considered leaving the pizza on the deck and departing. Suddenly, a loud noise emanated from within the house, followed by screams from both a man and a woman. It was evident that a violent altercation was taking place, and I found myself at a loss for what to do. The screaming persisted, escalating with each passing minute, and concern gripped me. It seemed like someone was in grave danger inside the house, possibly the woman enduring physical abuse. The disturbing sounds fueled my growing worry. Just as I was about to call the police, the man burst out of the house and snatched the pizza from my hands. He apologized for the delay, but I could sense he was lying, his attempt to mask the chaos behind him. Giving him a suspicious look, I declined his money and began walking away, already planning to call the authorities from my car. As I reached my vehicle in the driveway, the woman suddenly appeared, running towards me in distress. She pleaded for help, her battered state confirming the horrors that had unfolded. Her swollen eyes and bruised body bore witness to the brutality she had endured. Tears streamed down her face, and blood stained her nose and stomach. She confided in me that the man had sliced her stomach with a knife and threatened her with a gun. Desperation consumed her as she implored me to drive away before he found us and harmed us both. Her pleas were haunting, and I couldn't ignore her desperate need for assistance. Without a moment's hesitation, I unlocked the car doors, and she hurriedly climbed into the passenger seat. Fear and panic overwhelmed her, and she continued to plead with me to escape. I started the engine, and as we sped away, she used my phone to call the police, recounting the horrifying details of her ordeal. We arrived at my workplace, and my boss, after hearing the situation, showed understanding and compassion. The gravity of what had transpired lingered in my mind, and the following day I made the difficult decision to quit my job. The trauma was too overwhelming, and I knew I needed a fresh start, seeking a safer occupation. In the days that followed, Angela, the woman I had rescued, and I kept in touch. She had taken the initiative to reach out to me, expressing her profound gratitude for my intervention. It was through our conversations that I learned the full extent of her harrowing experience. Angela had endured years of abuse at the hands of Tom, her ex-partner. Trapped and isolated, she had no means of escape. He controlled every aspect of her life, leaving her without a phone or any local friends. This night, fueled by the revelation of her pregnancy, their argument had escalated to unimaginable violence. Tom's intentions were clear. He wanted to terminate the pregnancy by any means necessary. The altercation had reached its climax, leading Angela to strike back in self-defense, using a nearby hammer to incapacitate him. With her life hanging in the balance, she seized the opportunity to escape, finding refuge in the backseat of my car. The police arrived at the scene shortly after we had driven away. Tragically, they discovered that Tom had taken his own life, a final act of desperation in the face of his actions. Angela was finally free from his grasp, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would remain. As time passed, Angela and I developed a deep bond, forged by the shared trauma we had experienced that night. We connected on social media, allowing us to support each other's healing journey. Recently, I reached out to her, curious about how her life had unfolded since our encounter. Angela's response filled me with relief and joy. She expressed that she had found solace and happiness in a new relationship with someone who genuinely loved and cared for her. She shared photos of herself and her daughter, radiating happiness and security. It was evident that they had found a better place in life, far removed from the horrors they had once endured. Knowing that Angela had escaped her abusive past and was now thriving filled my heart with immense satisfaction. Our paths had intertwined under the most horrific circumstances, but through it all, we had managed to bring hope and support into each other's lives. As I reflect on that cold and windy night, I am reminded of the importance of compassion and bravery. The darkness of that experience propelled me to seek a safer path, while Angela's resilience and determination inspired me to never take the safety and well-being of others for granted. Our friendship stands as a testament to the power of human connection and the strength we can find in one another during times of profound adversity. Though the memories of that night may never fade entirely, we both have found solace in knowing that a brighter future awaits us. Story 3. During my late teenage years, I found myself working as a pizza delivery driver at a local pizzeria. One Saturday night, it was nearing 11 o'clock, and my manager approached me asking if I could take on one last delivery for the night. Typically, we wouldn't make deliveries past 10:30, but the unusually busy evening made it hard to refuse. I hopped into my old, beaten up 2008 Pontiac Grand Prix, feeling exhausted and eager to head home. To stay awake, I turned on some music, hoping it would help. Being familiar with the small town, I knew the area like the back of my hand. However, it was ironic that I had never delivered to this particular location before. The address I received was a few miles outside of town, in an area I had never ventured into. It felt like a different jurisdiction, or at least a whole different township. As I approached the house, I realized just how unfamiliar the area was, but I pushed any unease aside. According to my GPS, I had arrived, but to my surprise, I was still about a quarter mile away from the actual house. Perplexed, I kept driving until I spotted the next house, as I was literally in the middle of nowhere. Assuming it was a GPS glitch, I stopped at the next house, hoping it was the correct address. Reluctant to drive all the way up the long driveway without confirmation, I parked my car halfway and stepped out to check the mailbox for the address. Thankfully, the address on the mailbox matched the one on my GPS, providing a sense of relief. I proceeded to walk up the rest of the driveway towards the house. Knocking on the door, I waited patiently, but no one answered. Growing frustrated, as my income relied on tips, I reluctantly left the pizza on the front porch. Disappointed, I made my way back to the car, picking up the pace due to the darkness that engulfed the property with no outside lights illuminating the surroundings. As I walked, I suddenly heard footsteps, crunching leaves and snapping twigs, seemingly coming from the back of the house. My heart raced, and a chilling sense of unease swept over me. Without knowing who or what was behind me, I instinctively hurried back to my car, fearing what might await me if I stayed. I started my car and began backing up slowly. There was no room for a U-turn unless I drove all the way up the driveway, something I desperately wanted to avoid, focused on looking behind me while reversing. When I turned my gaze forward, a man wearing a wolf mask suddenly appeared, chasing after me. My instincts kicked in, and I floored the gas pedal, desperate to outrun him. The driveway had a slight curve, causing my car to skid off the gravel, colliding with the mailbox, nearly careening into a ditch. The man caught up to me and attempted to open the passenger side door, but fortunately I had locked it in time. I sped away, contemplating whether I should call the police or not as I returned to the restaurant. Eventually, I decided against it, fearing that no one would believe me or that my boss would accuse me of fabricating the story to hide the mailbox incident. So, I kept the terrifying encounter to myself, not sharing it with anyone at work. Strangely, no one contacted the restaurant to complain about the damaged mailbox. With time passing, it became increasingly apparent that the man in the wolf mask didn't live there. It seemed that the house was either vacant, foreclosed, or the residents were simply away. As the days went by, the incident continued to haunt me. I became convinced that the man with the wolf mask had a more sinister agenda than just ordering a pizza. It gnawed at me, wondering what his intentions could have been. Weeks turned into months, and still no news emerged about the incident. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. I began to delve into research, trying to uncover any information about the house and its mysterious inhabitants. The more I dug, the stranger things became. I stumbled upon local legends and rumors surrounding the area. Whispers of a hidden cult conducting dark rituals in abandoned properties sent shivers down my spine. The house I had visited seemed to align with the descriptions of one such abandoned dwelling. Curiosity fueled my determination to unravel the truth. I discreetly reached out to longtime residents of the town, seeking their knowledge of the house and the unsettling events that unfolded that night. I found a retired police officer who had served in the area for years. With cautious hesitation, he shared a chilling tale. The house had indeed been foreclosed upon years ago, and its previous owners mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Rumors spread about a malevolent presence that haunted the property. The officer recalled multiple incidents of trespassers reporting eerie encounters and unexplained phenomena. As my investigation deepened, I uncovered an old newspaper article from decades ago. It detailed a series of unsolved disappearances that occurred in the vicinity of the abandoned house. The victims were young adults, just like me, who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. The article mentioned an unidentified masked figure seen lurking in the shadows before each disappearance. Dread settled in my gut, connecting the dots between the masked man, the abandoned house, and the vanished victims. The realization that I had narrowly escaped a potentially gruesome fate sent shivers down my spine. The wolf mask became a symbol of malevolence, representing a lurking evil that preyed on unsuspecting souls. Haunted by what I had discovered, I couldn't keep the truth to myself any longer. I anonymously contacted the local authorities, providing them with all the information I had gathered. Although uncertain if they would take my account seriously, I hoped it would at least prompt an investigation into the mysterious occurrences surrounding that forsaken house. Days turned into weeks once again, and anxiety consumed me as I awaited any news from the authorities. Finally, I received an unexpected phone call. It was an investigator assigned to my case. He thanked me for coming forward and assured me that they would conduct a thorough investigation into the house and the masked figure I had encountered. Months passed with no updates from the investigator. I began to lose hope, thinking that the case had gone cold. But then, on a rainy autumn evening, I received a call from the investigator, his voice filled with urgency. He explained that they had uncovered a dark secret hidden within the abandoned house's walls. Behind a hidden panel, they discovered a hidden chamber filled with disturbing artifacts, symbols, and evidence of occult rituals. It appeared that the masked man and his cohorts had used the house as their twisted sanctuary. The investigation also revealed a connection between the masked figure and the unsolved disappearances from years past. The authorities managed to apprehend several individuals associated with the cult, including the man in the wolf mask. It was a bittersweet victory, knowing that justice would be served, but the horrors I had experienced would forever haunt me. News of the cult's discovery spread throughout the town, and the community felt a collective sense of relief mixed with lingering unease. People became more vigilant, watching out for any signs of similar sinister activities. In the aftermath of that fateful encounter, I left my job as a pizza delivery driver, eager to put the terrifying experience behind me. I moved to a different town, hoping to start anew. But the memories of that night continued to linger, casting a shadow over my every thought. I couldn't help but wonder if the cult's influence extended beyond that abandoned house, if their reach extended to other corners of the world. Determined to find closure and peace of mind, I dedicated myself to uncovering more about the cult and its members. I delved into books, online forums, and even sought the guidance of experts in the occult. I yearned for answers, for a deeper understanding of the darkness that had nearly consumed me. As my knowledge grew, so did my unease. I discovered that the cult had a history rooted in ancient rituals and forbidden practices. They believed in harnessing supernatural powers, seeking to invoke malevolent entities for their own twisted purposes. It sent chills down my spine, knowing that I had unknowingly stepped into their path. Driven by a newfound purpose, I reached out to others who had encountered similar encounters or had information that could shed light on the cult's activities. I formed connections with individuals who shared my determination to expose the truth to ensure that no one else would fall victim to their sinister machinations. Together, we formed a secret network, a collective of survivors, researchers, and individuals touched by the darkness. We pooled our resources, shared our findings, and strategized ways to dismantle the cult's operations. Our efforts extended far beyond that small town, as we discovered a network of interconnected cult cells operating in different regions. The more we uncovered, the more perilous the journey became. We faced threats, both physical and psychological, from the cult's devout followers. Our lives were constantly in danger as we played a dangerous game of cat and mouse, always one step behind the elusive leaders. But we persisted, fueled by our shared resolve to protect others from falling prey to the cult's malevolence. Our investigation led us to uncover more missing persons cases, unsolved mysteries, and dark secrets hidden beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. We refused to let fear paralyze us, instead channeling it into a burning desire for justice. As our actions gained momentum, we caught the attention of law enforcement agencies and media outlets. Our stories were shared, exposing the truth to a wider audience. Pressure mounted on the authorities to take action, and a task force was formed to dismantle the cult once and for all. Through careful planning, collaboration, and unwavering determination, we staged a series of simultaneous raids on the cult's hideouts. It was a risky endeavor, but we were determined to bring their reign of terror to an end. The arrest that followed marked a significant victory against the forces of darkness that had haunted us for far too long. With the cult's leaders in custody, their operations disrupted, and their followers scattered, a sense of relief washed over us. We had succeeded in protecting countless innocent lives from their nefarious plans. The town and its surrounding areas began to heal, albeit scarred by the horrors we had collectively endured. I eventually moved on with my life, forever changed by my encounter with the masked man and the journey that followed. But I vowed to remain vigilant, to ensure that the shadows would never swallow another soul. I became an advocate for those affected by cults and dedicated my efforts to raising awareness and providing support to survivors. The story of that night and the subsequent battle against the cult became a cautionary tale, a reminder that evil exists in the world, lurking in the most unexpected places. It served as a testament to the power of resilience, unity, and the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to be silenced. And so, the horror story that began with a simple pizza delivery unfolded into a tale of courage, discovery, and triumph over darkness. It reminded us that even in the face of unimaginable terror, the human spirit can rise, shining a light into the deepest shadows and restoring hope where it had been lost.